All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to this Adnexi Livestream. My name is Sandra Shpilberg, and I am the CEO and founder of Adnexi, a disease intelligence platform for patients and biopharma. And we're streaming simultaneously right now to my LinkedIn profile and Adnexi's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And all our past episodes can always be found on our website, adnexi.com. So we hold these live streams to learn more about the journey of patients, researchers, and biopharma as they collaborate to bring new treatments to those who need them. And please feel free to leave us any questions or comments while we're live if you have any questions for our guest. Today, my guest is Kendra Gottsleben. She is a marketing communications specialist, an author, a spokesperson on living a life with a rare disease and disability. Her career blends the two worlds in which she grew up, medicine and education, and her membership on numerous boards, advisory groups, and professional societies keep her actively engaged locally, statewide, and nationally. She enjoys being helpful as a resource in providing support to families and children who have severe or life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Welcome, Kendra.
Hello, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for having you here. So Kendra, you and I go way back. So let's start by talking about how we met back in 2005. I was working at BioMarin, right? And then what were you doing at that time?
So at that time, I was in the clinical research trial for Naglazyme, which is the medicine that I received for my mucopolysaccharidosis type 6. So it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. And what was it like to be a patient in a clinical trial for the first treatment ever for MPS 6?
Well, I was 16 at the time, so I don't know if I totally grasped the how monumental. I mean, I knew it, but I was just kind of like, this was something my family and I chose to do. But what I gained from that experience is it was interesting to see all the ins and outs of like the testing, the walk tests, and all those things that go into getting a medicine approved. Such an upside that if you're not in it, you would never really understand or know that happens.
Exactly. A lot goes into these clinical trials, right? Both from the perspective of the company, right? The investigators, the doctors that are conducting the clinical trial, and then what the patients have to do, right? So maybe, can you share maybe some memories from that clinical trial time?
Well, so I'm originally from the Midwest, so I'm from South Dakota, and the trial was in Oakland, California, which was, those two places aren't anything alike.
That's right.
So we had to move out there for like up to 6 months. So that was definitely a different experience, and we lived in a hotel and stuff. But some of the wonderful memories that I have is being part of that. I got to meet, that was the first time I'd ever met someone that had the same condition that I had, and I was 16 at the time. So that's the first time I had ever met anybody. But I got to the phase that I was in. There was a boy from Portugal, a girl from France, and a girl from Brazil. But the difficulty was none of them spoke English. So, and the two girls were like around my age. So it kind of, it was fun, but at the same time, it was like, I don't know what you're saying. But we had a mom, the Portuguese mom. She spoke French and she spoke English and she kind of spoke Brazilian. So she was kind of our translator when we would get together. So she was very busy.
Yes. Thank you for that, Kendra. And of course, having a rare disease and sort of being alive in general, right, comes with lots of challenges. But today, I'd love to explore with you the gifts that this rare disease has brought your way. And you've been very vocal about that. So I'd love for you to share what have been these gifts that are enabled by the situation.
So, for me, being part of that clinical trial is even one of those gifts because I got to meet people from other countries. I got to see what it's like from their perspective. There's not a lot of people that get to say they were part of a clinical trial and to say that they were part of getting something FDA approved. But the medical professionals, the nurses, the doctors, all the people that have come into my life due to having MPS. The career that I have, like if I didn't have a disability or a rare disease, I certainly wouldn't be probably working where I am, or I wouldn't have the opportunity to speak with you. So I say that my condition doesn't completely define who I am, but to a certain aspect, it has led me in the path that I have gone with life.
Absolutely. And that's such a good way to look at anything, right? Any challenges that we encounter in life, right? They don't necessarily define us, but they present the challenge and they present then the opportunity to resolve the challenge. And then, like you mentioned, in that opportunity to resolve the challenge, there's a bunch of really rich things that happen, right? Lots of the people that you met, this clinical trial, this historic clinical trial that you got to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think
yes, absolutely. And just for background,
that balance of yes, there's a lot of difficult times, but the gifts for me outweigh the challenges.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a wonderful perspective, Kendra. I really, really appreciate it. So when challenges do come your way, then how do you deal with them?
Well, I think a lot of people think, because I am always trying to be positive and optimistic, I am always trying to be that way. But at the same time, I recognize that we have to allow ourselves some time where we might be a little frustrated or we might be a little down. But my idea or the way I look at it is I let myself be in that moment or be in that time, that negative or just that, this isn't fun time for a little bit. And then I get myself out of it and say, now look for the positives. Because if we stay in that, oh, the world is against me, that negativity, then there's nothing. We're not going to keep pushing forward and trying to make ourselves or the people around us better.
Yes, absolutely. I'm typing some of these things that you just said into the chat because they're just so powerful and meaningful. But you're recognizing that you have to allow yourself some frustration, some sadness, some space to feel the challenge for a little bit, and then get out of it, right? And to some extent, that's a choice, right?
Totally. I mean, because the reality is, I've had people say, like, you're always positive, you're always optimistic. And I am. I don't want people to think that I don't have my down times. I just don't allow me to stay in that because it's not healthy and it's not good for anyone.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Kendra, for sharing. I think that is worth so much for people to hear that. Okay, let's move on to your books. So you wrote 3 books, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about each one. So why don't we start with the first book that you wrote?
Okay, so the first book I wrote is called Live, Laugh, Lemonade, A Journey of Choosing to Beat the Odds. And this book I self-published in 2012. I had just started finishing, on the path of college and was kind of having didn't know what to do and just kind of thinking about stuff. And I had a friend say, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And so I kind of sat down and put a couple chapter titles down and sent it to him. And he was like, he had sent me like 15 chapter titles, and I was like, "Oh wow, you've really thought this through." So what I did is, my goal with this book at first was just kind of sharing, because a lot of the writing that I've done previous to books is just kind of sharing my perspective on how I look at things, kind of like the lemons and stuff like that. And so I was like, wouldn't that be cool to put that kind of into a book? But then I realized, so that was to understand the perspective or the where I am at that point, you needed to understand what I was like when I was a little kid, and like the surgeries and being diagnosed and all that. So the book kind of ended up being more of an autobiography, because I was kind of more just going with these are things that I think about, these are how I view things. But I was like, understanding my upbringing will help understand, my perspective.
Absolutely. And these personal stories, I believe, are so important, right? Because I think for many of us, we sometimes feel alone in our challenges, and generally we're not alone, right? There's another person who's going through the same situation. So thank you for writing that first book. I'm sure you helped a lot of people feel less alone.
Yeah, I was really fortunate, and one of the moments that I felt like wow, this has been impactful for somebody, was I got a dad from Canada had messaged me through Facebook and said, "We bought your book. Our daughter is 4 and she just got diagnosed with MPS 6, and we're hoping this book kind of helps us figure out like how your parents raised you and kind of the things, and so that our daughter can maybe have some of that same aspects." And I was like, full circle. I mean, it was just kind of like a wow moment for me.
Yeah, it's so gratifying, right? To know that you touched another person's life.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the second book.
So the second book's idea kind of came from the first book, where it's like kind of making it into a kid book. So if you see, there's a lot of lemons in my theme. So this one's called Kendra's Lemonade. And so this one kind of is more, it's also kind of like a teaching book, where I ask questions in some of the like paragraphs, where I'm trying to help kids understand that being unique and being different is okay. And so some of them with, like, if a question is, I'm really short and my classmate is really tall, but this is how I do this. What makes you unique? So for this book, The Kendra's Lemonade is like, if you were a student, or if you were a school counselor, or even just a parent that just kind of wants like a conversation. This book is kind of where I was kind of focusing on, is the discussion of, so that anybody can read it, not just, someone with a rare disease or a disability, but kind of saying like, even maybe they don't have quote unquote a disability, but they wear glasses, so they look different, or you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that it's just kind of that simple thing. And so that was a fun, and that one I self-published too, so that was kind of a fun character to do. And then the illustrators are also local South Dakota people, so I kind of was excited to go on that journey. And there's nothing like seeing an illustration, like, because obviously the character is called Kendra, which is me, but when I got that first photo of like the girl Kendra, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is so weird to see yourself as a cartoon or a character like that. So
Can you show us Kendra in the cartoon character?
So let me see.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
So
That's great.
yeah. So it was
Very
fun.
good. That's great. That's great, Kendra. And so with that one, I think what's coming up for me and what you described is that you really sort of achieved universality, right? Which is always what we want to do with some of our writing, right? That it's like, okay, you're being unique and you're being different, but being unique and different because of the condition you were diagnosed with is not that different than being unique and different because of anything else, right? Like the country you come from or how you look or how you speak or whatever it might be, and that it is okay to be your own unique self. So I love it.
I think we're all, if you like take a step back, like we're all different. I mean, none of us are exactly alike. Even if you have the same rare disease or the same disability or the same heritage background, that doesn't mean you've had the same path or experiences.
That's
So,
right.
you know, if we were all the same, then the world would not be, you know, fun.
That's right. That's right. All right. And now finally, the third book.
So this one I worked with an actual publisher, and this one's called Kendra's Perfect Dance Routine. And so this one is, when I was in grade school, I was in dance for 2 years. It was a struggle because of my bent knees and the airway. I would get tired quickly, but I loved dance. And so this book is kind of showing how, even though she loves to dance, you know, she kind of gets down, she kind of gets frustrated, but her friends help her, and then she helps herself figure out that your dance might not be just like, you know, your peers in the classroom, but your dance is unique to you. You know, so it's another twist of it, but in the dance type of scheme. And I just think part of it too is why, with the kids' books, why I wanted to do that, right, is because I feel like there's more, but when I grew up, there weren't really books that that I could relate to, or like a kid that had a disability or a kid that had a rare disease. So I think there's there's more room for that.
Yes. Absolutely. There's a need. I think there's a need at the end of the day, right? I mean, we know it, right? Because, you know, I've been working in the rare disease space for the last, 15, 20 years. You've been a rare disease, a person with a rare disease. And so there is a need, right, to support, I think, that community, this community. Great, Kendra. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have another thought?
And I think sometimes what happens is, when people think of the word like diversity, sometimes disability and rare disease gets left out of that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, but with rare disease and disabilities in general, they cross every race, you know, everything. I mean, every gender, every social and economic level. I mean, it's one of the biggest, if you would say, a minority of all. So that's where I feel like if there's any more growth to be had, is in that aspect of people with disabilities or rare disease.
Yes, absolutely. I typed that here in the comments as well, because I think you've said so many things that are quotable, Kendra. I'm like, let me type them here so we can record them. But I completely agree. Many times we think of diversity, primarily based on gender or based on the color of the skin. But disability, rare disease, all of that, it's also a way to bring diversity and to acknowledge diversity. So thank you for that, Kendra. Great. So to wrap this up, my last question to you is, what advice do you have for other people living with a rare disease?
So the biggest one that I have is that the sooner, and I talk to young kids too with disabilities about this or rare disease, is the sooner that we're able to accept ourselves and recognize the areas of weakness we have or our strengths, the more confident or the more successful we are. And what I also try to strive with young adults or anybody with a disability or rare disease is that there isn't anybody in this world that doesn't have something they have to overcome. And so, like you said earlier, you're not alone. In reality, none of us are really alone because we're all have these journeys. But the thing is not everybody shares about it, or not everybody, takes the time to talk about it. I mean, and that's personal. I mean, so, but if you're able to find people that you are comfortable with sharing, then you realize you're not as alone as you think you are. I mean, you're not going to find like an identical, just like we said earlier, where the world is different, like everybody's different. But there's going to be one or two or three or four things that you maybe have in common with this person that then you start feeling, I'm not as alone as I thought I was.
Yes. Thank you, Kendra. I like it because I feel like we got to a lot of really deep topics here, I want to review a couple of the quotes that I put here. So you said, there isn't anybody in this world that doesn't have something to overcome, right? That is so true. Oh my goodness, right? Like we're all overcoming something or other. And we're not alone just because of that, just because we all face challenges. And like you said prior, we all sort of have this choice of what to do with that challenge, right? And I like your approach, feel frustrated and sad for a little bit, but not too long, right? Because life goes on.
Yeah. And that's just realistic that everybody has stuff, so allow yourself to be in it and then, move on. It's easier, I mean, for some people it's easier said than done, but just acknowledging that, and feeling that it's okay, I need to work through this a little bit more. But so I think there's so much with the rare diseases, and some are visible, like obviously mine. I'm 3 feet tall, so you see me and you obviously know that there's something going on with that person. But there's other rare diseases that they're normal height, like cystic fibrosis. I mean, if they're just walking, you don't know. So you don't know everybody's journey until you take the time.
Yes. Well, Kendra, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your words, your wisdom, your books, and your beautiful smile. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kendra. And thank you to anyone else who was watching us. Feel free to leave us any comments. And these videos are always available at adnexi.com. This episode with Kendra, plus all our previous episodes. Thank you.